In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we discuss the issues that plague the underserved and marginalized communities and how we can best inspire, motivate, inspirate, and uplift. Tonight, we have a very special guest. We've got Mr. Tony Walker Billups with us tonight. Tony Walker Billups is a lifelong resident of Birmingham, Alabama. He is an HIV advocate and activist. He started working in the HIV field in 2013 and had lived with HIV for 31 years. Tony has done many things to improve the lives of people living with HIV and those with high indicators for acquiring the virus. During his time in the nonprofit arena, he created a mentoring program to help young people living with HIV transition from adolescent care to adult care. He also created a PrEP clinic that operates under non-traditional hours to better serve those who find it hard to access PrEP. He is also one of the co-founders of Birmingham Black Pride, Alabama's longest consecutive Black Pride organization. HIV is a disease that disproportionately affects Black gay men. There's very little representations of this vital population at the most influential levels, and it seems to be getting worse. Tony doesn't shy away from discussions about race regarding HIV. Race has to be taken into consideration for all forms of prevention, treatment, and education. In 2020, Tony released his first book entitled Walking in Truth, Fatherhood, and was recently featured in a mini documentary on CNN called Blind Angels, in which he speaks about the importance of mentoring in HIV care. Tony is a father, grandfather, uncle, friend, and mentor. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce Mr. Tony Walker Billups. Hello, sir.
Hey, what's going on, Charles? Can you hear me?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am excellent. Thanks for being here. Is there anything you'd like to add to your bio before we get into the show?
I think that covered it. Like, I don't like talking about myself like that for real, but I think that's pretty covered. I'm father, grandfather, mentor, married. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Well, I tell you, it is an honor to have you here on the show, and tonight, especially, I'm looking forward, to you educating our audience and giving us some nuggets of some things that we need to learn and what we need to know.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to start with you as an author. So what inspired you to write about your experience as an HIV advocate and community organizer?
So the book is actually about me there's a little bit of that in it, but it's actually about me being a young Black gay man growing up in Birmingham, Alabama. I affectionately call the South the buckle of the Bible Belt. Mm-hmm. So like growing up in a very conservative environment, knowing that you're gay, knowing that you're different, and trying to figure out what the heck am I supposed to be doing? So, you do what you do. Like, I'm one of those people. I think when I was younger, I would call myself a bit of a conformist. Okay. I did a lot of things to conform with whatever the norms were. Not only like getting a girlfriend when I knew from wee high that I liked boys to fit in, but I remember even I made my first F in English in the 7th grade. Trying to fit in because people talked about me for being smart. So I'm like, well, I'll show them. I'll make a bad grade too. Yeah, they talked about me even worse. So being a conformist and The long and short of that story is it's about how you can turn tragedy into triumph. I
Right.
had one child with her. I raised two. Just a little snippet. Found out that the youngest one wasn't mine. I always had my doubts, but I found out 3 weeks before he died in 2011 that he wasn't mine. And so,
Oh, no.
yeah, so he had a short catastrophic illness. The whole time I'm going up to the hospital, start seeing this other dude there that we went to high school with. I'm like, what's he doing here? And long story short, it finally came out that he was actually his father and I had raised him. So I kind of lost him twice.
Man. Oh, wow.
So, I always like compare myself. I'm a comic book geek, right? So like Superman, Batman, like most heroes have some type of tragedy that befalls them and they kind of like bounce back from that tragedy. So like my tragedy was like losing a child who was mine. I mean, he wasn't mine biologically, but I raised him. But then what does that do to you after that happens? And so since then I've adopted two kids and I've adopted another one.
Oh, wow.
But these are all young black men, two gay, one straight. And it's like, trying to figure out how to give back and try to help, other people get to where you want them to be or where they need to be or where they want to be.
Oh, wow. So in doing that, I mean, so how does what made you want to do the adoptions, and how does that fit into your family dynamics as far as like the work that you're doing?
So I didn't really think about it as far as the work when I first started doing it. But like I grew up pretty much without a dad. My mom had me when she was 14. There's a little place in Birmingham called Dolomite. Yes, Dolomite is a real place. So I grew up in a little place called Dolomite. I was the first child of a 14-year-old girl. And I kind of like grew up without my father. And she had all types of reasons why my dad wasn't in my life. I found out when I was 16 he wasn't in my life because he was in prison because he was a bank robber, a robber. But anyway, so I pretty much grew up without a dad. And what was interesting was, Charles, and you probably noticed this too, and a lot of us noticed this, like around Christmas or Thanksgiving, you might go to like a McDonald's or someplace, you might see this young black boy with this older white man or a younger white man, and you automatically know this is big brothers, big sisters. And so like the thing that bothered me, I'm like, well, not only does his sorry father not want to spend any time with him, but really we got to go outside of the community to find someone to mentor this little black boy. And it kind of pissed me off. So my ex-husband and I, he had a nephew, a first cousin who was 3 when we first met. And we pretty much raised him, put him through school. He's actually at Berea College now. But that was in 2008 when I met Bobby. But in 2012, my sister who lives in Atlanta, she had a lot of issues, but one of her children were in foster care and they were about to terminate her parental rights. And she called me and she told me what was going to happen. And I sat there, I'm like, you can't sit around and criticize other people if you're not willing to do it for your own family. And not that it was ever a hesitation, because I believe that the universe, God, whoever, has been preparing me to be Maurice's dad his entire life. Because even as a baby, I was still keeping for her sometimes. But like it was a no-brainer that we adopted Maurice, And then my next one, it's an adult adoption, but he's a young adult. Our first child had a best friend when they were in high school, and we kind of helped them out financially. And I tell them all the time, I was so jealous of their relationship because who would not want a gay best friend in high school? They're like freaking frat, like Laverne and Shirley. And so, like, I was low key jealous of their relationship because I would have loved to have a gay best friend in high school, right?
Right.
So once they graduated from high school, Freddie went to Jacksonville State. They graduated in May of 2023. Went to school in August, and Freddie's mom died in November. And so like we have been there for him for the last 3 years. So in April of last year, he calls me. He says, Uncle Tony, he says, I just realized that school gets out and I don't have a place to go. And I was like, well, you can come live with me and Demetrius. That's not a problem. He's like, well, I also don't have insurance. I'm like, well, we'll get you a policy out the exchange. And one of my friends told me, like, it might be better just doing adult adoption. He's 19 years old. He doesn't have a family to really go back to for real. And I could put him on my insurance till he's at least 26. So I talked to him about that, and he said he wanted to do it. So we go to court on the 8th, and he becomes a Walker Billups.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Yeah, but I've been really, really fortunate to be able to even do stuff like this. But I think there are a lot of other people who can do stuff like this and don't. But at the end of the day, these are all our children, and it's up to us to make sure they have the things that they need.
So, can you tell us about your writing process and how you approach storytelling?
Well, so I'm a natural storyteller. And I don't know where I get it from, because as a child I stuttered really, really bad. But I'm a natural storyteller. And so I'm gonna be honest, I started writing my book. Tari died in 2011. I started writing my book like in 2012, because he died in October. And I started writing the book, but I was angry. And I kept getting this block. I couldn't go any further. Long story short, around 2016, I'm also a cancer survivor. I forgot about that. But when I had my surgery for my cancer, one of my best friends that I had for over 30 years died. And I could not get past that. I'm the person that, grandma and them die, I'm gonna be at the funeral, helping everybody, might even sing in the choir. But when Sonia died, it was just something I could not get over. And I realized it was because I did not go through my grieving process, because I was in the hospital when she died, couldn't go to her funeral. Long story short, I started going to therapy. And therapy works. Y'all need to go to therapy. But anyway, once I went to therapy and was able to figure out the anger that I had, it made it easier for me to write, right? So I started writing the book. I got it to around 20 pages, and I have a friend who actually recently just passed away. His name is Joseph Macon. He was the mayor of East Point, Georgia for 4 years in the early 2000s. We went to college together, and he was also a straight Black man. And I sent the transcript to Joey. I'm like, so read this, tell me what you think. He goes, this is a good story, but I need to know who these people are. So he was challenging me on character development. So long story short, I do some more character development, and then the pandemic hits. And I'm not a sourdough bread maker, so that wasn't going to be my thing to do. So I decided that was my time to write the book. So I sent the transcript to about 3 of my friends, and tell me what y'all think about this. And then they were like, what happens next? And I'm like, you think I should finish this? They were like, yes, you should finish it. So in about 8 weeks, I ended up cranking up about 240 pages. And it's all about my life. And anybody who reads it, anybody who knows me, it's like reading your book is like talking to you, because I wrote the book the same way that I talk. So that was the process of writing it. But also, I have to say this: there were a couple of things in the book in which they really challenged me on. There's got to be more to this than that. One of the more challenging parts for me to write was after my son died. My actual son, my biological son, was kind of jealous of the relationship that I had with my other son. And we got into a lot of heated arguments around that time. And he always felt like I treated his brother better than I treated him. And he goes, and you knew he wasn't your child. I'm like, I never knew he was my child. Y'all knew. And literally, it was the secret that everybody knew but me. They didn't tell me. I had my suspicions, but no one ever confirmed to me that boy wasn't mine. And so I got so mad one day, and I actually wrote this in the book. I'm like, you know what? I think the wrong child died. That was not a proud moment for me as a parent. I was angry. He was angry.
Yeah.
And you say things out of anger sometimes, but we're better now. We're better now. But that was a really, really rough time. So having friends who know my story, you need to tell this how it happened. So I kind of had that process going on.
So how do you hope your writing will impact your readers?
Honestly, when I wrote the book, I really just wrote it for therapy. I had a lot of stuff in me that I had to get out. And I have a friend who I actually talk about in the book, and she knows me. We've known each other for years. And she actually read the book before it even got on hard copy. She read the Kindle version of it. And she called me, and that was before I got married. She's like, Walker, she said, I was reading your book. I'm like, this is gonna be kind of messy. She said, but you know what? You hit it out the park. And I don't fancy myself a writer. I mean, I just wrote a book. I don't even call myself an author. I'm a person who wrote a book. But anyway, so she disclosed some things to me about her. She was like, there's a part in the book in which I worked for her at one time. And there's a part in the book when I started working for her out at the radio station we met.
Yes.
So when I was at the radio station,
yes,
she was my boss, and she was like, look, don't let these white folks know you gay up here. They very, very conservative, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, after about 6 months, everybody gonna find out because I ain't got no girlfriend. What do you think I'm doing, right? So in the book, I wrote about that. And she said, I want you to understand when I told you about not, disclosing your identity, I wasn't doing it because I was ashamed of you. I'm like, I never thought that. I understood. Like my boss had a Confederate flag in his office and was proud of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was proud of it. So I'm like, no, I understood. She goes, because, I would never have been ashamed of you because my brother's gay. And I've known this girl for like over 50 years. She never said her brother was gay. And I'm like, kind of knew that, but it was one of those things. But she ended up telling me, she said, I'm going to buy 50 copies of this book. She literally bought 50 copies of the book. And she said, I want you to give this to people who could benefit from this because I think people could benefit from it.
Oh, wow.
And again, the story is about me navigating that space between trying to figure out who you are because of then, and in the 80s, who were our gay icons? We didn't have anybody,
Exactly.
So we didn't have a roadmap. So like I had to be my own roadmap. And you make mistakes along the way. And so she was like, I think this book can help people who are struggling. And and I probably given away more than I sold. Like I published on Amazon. I buy author's copies to just give them to people. I got a couple books I need to give people now because I didn't do it to make money.
Right.
It was therapy. Now my second book that I'm writing on now, I'm gonna try to make some money out that one. It's gonna be a little bit more salacious. It's more about. It's called Walking in Truth HIV. It's about my HIV journey.
Okay.
Because everybody's journey is different, and mine has definitely been unique. But I think people need to know, what it looks like.
Oh, wow. What themes do you explore in your writing? Or have you thought about themes?
So in my first book, it was really about relationships and self-actualization. There was a lot, when people don't know who they are, they tend to make a lot of mistakes. And like for a while, I did not know who I was or who I was supposed to be. But then I think about my ex, like what kind of person lies to a man about the paternity of their child?
Oh. Like
she knew full well that child wasn't mine.
Oh.
But you still lied. You still took me to child support court. You did all this evil crap. And so like she's got some learning and growing she needs to do as well. But that ain't my battle. She's not to give an account to that. But she full well knew what she did and how she did it. And then Charles, she would lie about it. Because another part of that book, my boss, she worked for my boss's best friend. And one day during Thanksgiving, her best friend was like, hey, how come Tony don't pay child support? Y'all know y'all make good money at the radio station. And she was like, what do you mean Tony doesn't pay child support? And she's like, old girl said he don't pay. She said, tell her to stop lying. I know how much money he pays for child support because I signed this check every week. And we made good money at the radio station. Like I was paying like $900 a month child support, like in the early 2000s, and not missing it because we made so much money. Right. But like for you to be that type of B word, I don't know if stuff on here and that, but for you to be that type of person to lie on somebody who's actually paying child support on one of the children wasn't even mine. Like one wasn't even mine, and you still lying.
You know what? I think she's lucky that you didn't sue to get your money back.
And you can't do that once you sign off. You can't do that.
Oh, believe me, if the paternity is that way, I mean, you don't. I thought that
maybe they changed the laws, but like maybe they changed the laws. But when you're a father and you're not married, even as a married person, you don't really get a lot of support from the system. They automatically go with the women. Like the women are automatically the best parents. And let me say, most of the time they are, but there are a few. It's like that 8%. That 8%. That 8% is problematic, bro. Like they are really, really problematic.
Oh, so how do you incorporate your personal experiences into your writing? Like, is there like a concept that you use? I mean, how do you get to this point where you're just writing about your personal life?
It's like I know my story, and I'm a person who's honest about my story. Even in my work, before I started the work I'm doing now, I worked in nonprofit, and a nonprofit, you do a lot of coalition building, you do a lot of talking to people, and like I remember hearing people talk, well, so and so gave me HIV, blah blah, and I'd be like, ain't I gave you HIV? Like you knew what to do to prevent it, unless you were raped. Even if they lied about their status, you knew what to do to protect yourself, and you chose not to. I can't say somebody gave me HIV, even though it was in the 90s when I was diagnosed. Even in the 90s, I knew condoms, abstinence work. Right. I ain't do damn one of them.
Right.
So I can't be mad at nobody. If I'm going to be mad, which I'm not, I can't be mad at nobody but myself, right?
Right, exactly.
I kind of just tell my story, and even in the first book that I read, and the first book that I wrote, and even the second book, everything in those books are true, except for the names. I changed the names to protect the guilty.
Right.
It is what it is. If you want to read this and say, "Oh, that's me," he talking about, well, you're a horrible person. I should have went into comedy.
You know what? I think that's the thing that you learn when in becoming an author. That if you're going to tell a story, a real good story, is automatically known. And a lot of these self-publishing companies will tell you, especially when you want to put in that fiction category, this is a figment of your imagination. This is not real.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fiction. Mine is a fictionalized biography. So yeah, that. But yeah, but I just, like I said, I just kind of like tell my story, like, and not. I just have been in the place where not only do I have a lot of personal stories to tell, there are a lot of anecdotal stories that I've been aware of too. Like when we worked in the radio station before we moved down to the Medical Forum building, we had this lady this was in the early 2000s, and she was supposed to fax a contract to her client. And so the client called her the afternoon, like, the contract didn't go through. Could you refax it? So she goes to the girl who told her how to fax, like, hey, my client didn't get that contract and they want me to refax it. How am I supposed to refax it? She was like, well, just refax it. Like, get the fax and put it again. This woman literally thought that once you put the thing in the fax machine, it took it to where it was supposed to be going.
Oh my God. Where did she come from?
Andalusia, Alabama, which
Lord.
It tracks. Especially in the early 2000s, it tracks.
She on that other side.
Yeah, she like this woman got, how to have little crossing arms in the parking deck. She's the only person I ever know that got hit by one of those things. So yeah, it tracks.
My God. So let's transition over to your career here as an HIV advocate. So what inspired you to become an HIV advocate?
If this was, what year is this, 2025? If this was 13 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I had worked in like for-profit in different arenas for years. I worked in retail, like that was my first career. My second career was working in radio. And then in 2008, I was like, you know what? There's got to be more to life than trying to sling these radio spots and yelling at people for not making their goals. People don't understand how important generational wealth is to people, especially Black people. So my grandmother died in 2007, and she left me a house in Titusville. And if you don't have to worry about where you're going to lay your head, you can play around a little bit. So from 2008 to 2013, I just bounced around. Like you were to look at my resume, I had 10 jobs from 2008 to 2013.
Oh, wow.
Like every 6 months, because at that point, I'm working because I want to work, not because I need to make money. I mean, you need to make money, but if I ain't like what was going on, I've been working for AT&T. AT&T is horrible. You think the customer service is horrible when you call in? It's because they're even worse on the inside. Like they do a whole bunch of stuff that I would not want to do to people. But I went through training, got on the floor. I'm like, oh, I'm out of here. I can't do it. But I ended up landing in a nonprofit in HIV. and one of my friends hired me on this part time, and really it was just a need that I saw. So like anytime a movement forms or a new coalition, a new group, that's usually there to fill a gap or need.
Right.
And part of what I did originally was going out testing people. They come to the office and test. And you got somebody, you testing them for HIV, you got to do what we call a risk assessment. Talk about how many people they slept with them, when they slept with them, how you sleep with them, all this stuff. So getting people business, right? And so invariably, I will be sitting there with somebody who said, one, they're either a virgin and they haven't had sex, or they ain't had sex in 5 years. And while I'm sitting there waiting on the test to run, they just be sitting there just shaking. I'm like, why are you so nervous? Cause if I find out I got this mess, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm like, you're gonna be fine. Now people die from HIV. Like, no, not no more. You don't know. I remember the first time I was like, well, actually I do. At this point, I've been living with HIV for about 20 years. You take your meds, you're gonna be just fine. And they're like, really? Like, you don't even look like it. And I'm like, is there a look now?
Okay, so, I'm about to say what that look like.
What that looks like, right? So that's how I started. I started like coming out about my status that way. And that was really early in my HIV career. Like I started working at that place in August. And by December 1st, which was World AIDS Day, I was telling my story in the newspaper. And then I went to Huffman High School and told my story. One of my friends, I love her to death. Her name is Chantel Mosley. We worked together at the radio station. And on World AIDS Day, there was a reporter from the Birmingham News, because, we actually had newspapers back then, 2013. It seemed like it was forever ago. But it was a Sunday morning, and Chantel calls me like just excited and livid at the same time. Tony Walker, what's this I see about you living with HIV in this newspaper? How come you didn't tell us? And I'm like, what? She goes, Grover, her husband's name is Grover. He's a police officer. She said, Grover came in and was like, how long Tony been living with HIV? And I'm like, don't be saying that. He ain't got HIV. You think every gay person got HIV, blah, blah, blah. and Grover was like, well, it's here in the paper. He said it. If it's a lie, he told it. And she was upset with me, Charles, because she felt like that I should have told my friends, my close friends, so they could help support me. It wasn't anything like, well, we could have got it from you or anything like that. She told me because she was like, we could have helped you with this. You didn't have to go through this by yourself. And it was really touching. But like, she was pissed off that I had not said anything about it. But also because she didn't understand the stigma that accompanies HIV. She didn't understand why I could not tell him about it, or why I felt like I couldn't tell him about it.
Right.
When you're living with HIV, there's a lot of bull crap you have to go through sometimes. The people who are ignorant, the things they say, the things they do. And so like you kind of guard yourself. But I also realized with my transparency about being HIV positive, being who I am, I took those shackles off. I'm free.
Well, the stigma today is just as deep. It's just not as much, but it's just as deep. And it's like it's still to some extent, it's causing a lot of people an enormous amount of stress and pressures that they don't need.
Yeah.
What would you suggest that people do when it comes to stigma? Because stigma is like really, really just unbelievable. It's horrible.
Yeah. So like part of the stigma that we get is self-inflicted. So like you're living with HIV, you don't want people to know, you're afraid that people are gonna find out. So you live with this internalized fear, right? But then the external part is the stupid stuff that people say about people who are living with HIV. I've been around people, they said she got this shit, and it's always like, what's the shit? Like, you got diarrhea or something? Like, what you talking about? But like, I think as general public, I think that we need to be careful and mindful about how we talk about folks.
Yes,
and as we get older, we should be reflecting on things that we've done and said. I never forget, as a child, we used to talk about the kids who were in special ed all the time. And we said some horrible things.
But when you're a kid, you don't really think about it.
Yeah, but at the same time, you don't have to be an asshole as a kid. And so and now, having like one of my boys lives with autism. He's a brilliant child. He just thinks differently. And I sometimes get a little sad to myself, like, would I have been mean to him as a child? You know? And I think that I wouldn't, but I do remember some of the kids I was kind of mean to. And it kind of like it's a gut punch. You know, and it kind of makes you rethink a lot of things that you do. But but yeah, the stigma is both internal and external. But I will also tell people this: disclosure is also personal. You know, there are a lot of people who will say, well, you know, if you're even just dating somebody, you need to tell them you're HIV positive. No, you know, ain't none of their business. They ain't tell you they got high blood pressure. or one of their kidneys shot.
No, they got a heart stent.
Right. They ain't told me that. So I gotta tell you my stuff. And I say that because people vilify things that they don't like. They're like, we always have to have a boogeyman. I'm gonna tell you this quick little story. You remember back in 2020 when COVID hit?
Yes.
So segue even further back than that. There are states right now. I live in Alabama. You live in Georgia. I think Georgia has HIV criminalization laws, meaning that if you have sex with someone and don't tell them you have HIV, you can be charged with a Class C felony, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna put that right here. However, when COVID came out in 2020, our legislators beat the brakes off the car trying to get laws passed to where if I came to work with COVID and I gave it to you and you died or got sick, you can't hold anybody harm. You can't sue anybody for that, right? So here's my problem with that and the whole boogeyman thing. Do I think that people who are living with HIV need to tell people their status? Yes, because I'm gonna tell you mine. You know, I'm on husband number 2. Both of them knew before we got in that I was positive, right? And they're both negative. But why is HIV different from COVID? Because one, HIV is less deadly than COVID. Right. Like, people die from HIV when they don't take that medicine. It takes a long time for it to get to the point where it develops into AIDS. And if I contract HIV for you, we done made some agreements. Right. What we're gonna do, how we're gonna do it, when we're gonna do it, how many times we're gonna do it. We done made some agreements, right? Now, if we left out the part about have you been tested or what's your status, that's on us. But we made some agreements to have sex, right? Exactly. If I'm coming to work with COVID, I ain't made no agreement with nobody.
Exactly.
I'm not asking, do y'all mind if I come to work with COVID? Or you know I got this COVID, like y'all might want to wear some masks. I just come to work and don't tell them. Half the damn office died, but somehow or another, that's not as bad as living with HIV. Yeah. And we don't think about stuff like that.
Yeah, you're right, because folk was actually walking around with COVID, giving people COVID, and they were dropping like flies.
Let me tell you something. I caught COVID the first time in November 2020, right? And I think partly because I'm part alien, and the other part is that since I'm living with HIV, I'm already taking antiretroviral medications, which is what the first treatment for COVID was the antiretroviral, and it prevents the virus from replicating, right? So the first time I caught COVID, I would diagnose myself with COVID because we were doing the rapid test on November 20th. For 7 whole days, I tested positive for COVID. I did not have a fever. I did not have a cough. I had absolutely no symptoms whatsoever. And I was like, oh, y'all sitting around here putting yourselves on false sense of security with this temperature thing. Because everybody like, let's take your temperature. I was pretty much typhoid Mary and could have infected anybody, but I did not have I was totally asymptomatic.
Right. So you were one of those special people.
The first time, now the second time that got me, but the first time I was Gucci. But you know, but like it's one of those things where people have to be responsible for their own actions, and we just don't. We're just not. But I don't think you should be going to jail, you know, because you have HIV and you slept with somebody. Just like I really don't think you should be going to jail for having COVID and killing half the office. But you should have stayed at home. Your boss shouldn't have made you come to work.
Right. See, so can you share a pivotal moment in your career that solidified your commitment to HIV advocacy?
Oh, how many? When you work in this field, you see a lot of stuff. You see a lot of stuff. Oh my God. Oh, there were a lot. Let me tell you one that kind of got me. I have terrible work boundaries. So like I'll put my work before me, especially when I was actually doing like care for people.
Mhm.
And the director of our HIV clinic here called me one day. He goes, Tony, I got this young man who will not take his meds.
Mhm.
I don't want to get too technical, but like your viral load is how much HIV you have in your body, and your CD4 count is how strong your immune system is.
Mhm.
Once you get below 200, you're pretty in bad shape, right? But you want it around 5 to 1,000.
Mhm.
He said, I got this young man here who won't take his meds, and he has a CD4 count of 9.
Oh my God.
Right.
Oh,
Just so y'all know, 9 is bad. Like 9 is really, really bad. And
yes.
he says, I can't get him to take his meds. If he didn't take his meds, he's gonna die. So I'm like, well, where is he? He said, he's in my office right now. I was like, I'll be there in 10 minutes. So I got in my car, drove over, and I talked to this young man. And he was talking about, and it was stigma that was killing him, not necessarily the HIV, because he didn't want to take his medications because he felt like nobody cared about him. He talked about he had this aunt who had cancer and how his mom and the family would go to the cancer walks and stuff like that, but they wouldn't do anything around HIV. And so
Mhm.
he said, when I was a kid, I had trouble swallowing pills, and my mom would talk me through it. I said, so you
Mhm.
just need somebody to talk you through taking your pills? He said, yeah. I said, tell you what, I got to take the same pill you got. So let's take our pills together. So that night when I got home, I called him and we were going to take his pill together. He had already taken his meds. And it was, for me, it just showed he just needed a little bit of support, just a little bit of support, not a whole lot, just a little bit.
Mhm.
So the next day, same thing. So I had to go out of town for a conference.
Mhm.
And the day after I went out of town, I called him. He didn't answer the phone. Called him again. He didn't answer the phone. So when I got back, my staff, who had been working with him with me, were like, well, we didn't want to tell you why you were in DC, but he passed away over the weekend.
Oh.
And it was too late for him to get any help. Even though he started taking his meds, it was too
It
late.
just wasn't enough for him to actually get the body and the immune system pumping.
No, it wasn't. But to me, that was unnecessary.
Mhm.
So, part of me being able, oh God, part of me doing the work that I do and did in the community was to make sure that no one ever has to live like that again. Like no one has to feel, and there are people I can't help everybody, but the people
Right.
who I know about who may need some support, who may need somebody to say, hey, you know what, you can live just like me. I want to be there for them. So that was one. There were several moments, but that's one that got me because it was too late. And then also, for people who provide services, knowing what other services are around. There are a lot of people like me who mentor people. I mean, I'm here today because of someone who mentored me when I wasn't taking my meds. Because
Mhm.
when I found out I was positive, it was like in the 90s, and like the meds were killing people. They were giving people AZT. And they had all these innovations. I didn't know nothing about it, but I was on my way out of here.
Yeah, the cocktail.
Yeah. And when my very first uh, HIV med was a 1 pill a day,
Mhm.
and it worked. But if I had not taken it, I probably would have died too. So like part of this is like me like paying it back,
Mhm.
because someone helped me, and I want to make sure other people get the help that they need.
Wow. So for our audience that's listening, can you go through that breakdown as you were talking about CD4 counts, viral loads, and things of that nature to help them to understand why it's important and why this therapy really does help?
So, couple things to be mindful of when and I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV. But like your body has your immune system is based on your CD4 or T cells. The average person has anywhere from 500 to 1600 T cells on average. When you get a cold or an infection, they go down because they're fighting to get rid of that infection. When you contract HIV, HIV does something very weird. It stops your CD4 cells from producing other CD4 cells. Humans have babies, dogs have puppies, cats have kittens. CD4 cells have other CD4 cells. When a CD4 cell is infected with HIV, it tricks the CD4 cell into making more fragments of the HIV. So what happens is the HIV starts to crowd out the immune system. So The CD4 cells are not replenishing themselves because they're making HIV fragments. So this right here starts doing this, and this here does that. Like you can have up to like 1 million count of HIV in your body. So once you start taking the medications actually stop the virus from replicating. So it makes the CD4 cells produce more CD4 cells instead of replicating the HIV. So your viral load calms down, and it usually raises your CD4 count. Most people in our field love the term U equals U. It's okay, but it's lazy. And it's lazy because undetectable is a mechanical number that moves. But back before we had the advancements that we have now, to be undetectable mean you had a viral load under 200. And then we got some more better microscopes, and it means you have a viral load under 50. At this point, you got to have a viral load under 20 to be undetectable. However, 200 is still the level where it's not transmissible. So even if someone isn't undetectable, as long as their viral load is under 200, they still pose no risk to the general public. And that's why, and it's a mouthful to say, but that's why I'm not a big fan of U equals U, because it's too simple. And it doesn't say enough, because a little bit of knowledge can be very dangerous. I remember this young guy had got diagnosed his senior year of high school, and his family made him stay upstairs in the top part of the house, gave him plastic, and this was like 2018, gave him plastic forks and stuff because they didn't want him eating out the other things because he was not undetectable. He was untransmissible, but he was not undetectable. And the average person doesn't have enough knowledge to understand that.
Oh, wow. Ooh, you know what? That's rough. I mean, especially in family treating you like that, like you got the plague.
Yeah, they treated him like that until he became undetectable. Then they were like, okay, you fine now. But he was fine before then. He was never not fine.
Right. How has your work with AIDS Alabama shaped your approach to HIV prevention and care?
I learned a lot. One thing that just working in the nonprofit field in general, as someone who's living with HIV, I never had to depend on, nonprofits or charities for services, but there are a lot of people who do. And a lot of times I think people who work in the field get kind of burnt out because they see the same people, needing the same thing. But like, if they didn't need stuff, you wouldn't have a job. But it also made me be a little bit more empathetic to people who have substance abuse issues or who have mental illness issues, who don't really know what to do. But there's definite need, like even right now in this current climate that we have with, this new administration going on, like cutting money for social programs just because you don't like the words they use is the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard in my life.
So, with that being said, especially like a nonprofit like AIDS Alabama, which has basically been a pretty big organization I know throughout the state that's done a lot. I mean, what are some of the things that you guys are hearing now, especially with the nonprofit organization you're with now, when it comes to funding and the federal government, when it comes to this new climate?
So I actually once I left AIDS Alabama, I started my own nonprofit called Empowered Health Equity Alabama. It is located in Ensley. If y'all from Birmingham and know, it's like the only AIDS service organization located in the hood for real, because that's where the need is. I thought that was important.
Spot. That's a
but I now work for a pharmaceutical company that I'm not going to name, but people who know me know who I work for. But I'm not doing this on their behalf. I'm doing this as Tony the activist. But like one thing that I did learn, and also my husband runs the agency now, is that there is a lot of work that needs to be done by people who look like us in communities where we live. And if you take away that funding, then you really hurt a lot of people. I think one of the things I'm most proud of in my career at HIV was creating a PrEP clinic. For people who don't know, PrEP is a treatment that prevents you from contracting HIV. It's kind of like the birth control pill or the depot shot. So like now there's an oral form and then there's an injectable form of PrEP. And you do this, you take the pills once a day, you do the injectables once every other month, and you don't have to worry about contracting HIV. Now you have to contract everything else. you can contract everything else, but those things are curable. But this will prevent you from contracting HIV. And what I found when I was going to a lot of conferences was you have well-meaning people, mostly white people, telling them, well, Black people aren't on PrEP at the same rates as their white counterparts because they live in poverty or they live in a Medicaid non-expansion state and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but it's free. Like, even without insurance, you can get PrEP for free. There's got to be another reason why Black people are not taking it, right? So I did a little research, and there was a study done by Hearst in 2006 that said that Black women who have Black OBGYNs have better outcomes than Black women who don't. And I started thinking about my medical care. When I got diagnosed with colon cancer, they told me I had internal hemorrhoids for 9 months. Nobody laid a glove on me. How you gonna tell me what's wrong with me? You ain't touched me.
Oh, wow.
So with that in mind, I built the clinic that centered Blackness. I had a Black medical director, nurse practitioner, social worker. But the other thing I did, Charles, was that I made the hours non-traditional. So they were only open from 6 to 9 on Tuesdays and 10 to 3 on Saturdays. Because even if I have insurance, I may not be able to leave work for 2 hours to get these pills, to get this shot.
Right.
We were successful from the jump, and they are still doing the work now. They've expanded their services. We started doing PrEP and actually started doing treatment. Like, I was one of our first patients, because I'm like, if you could do excuse me, if you can do prevention, you can do treatment. So they do prevention and treatment for people who don't have insurance and people who do. So yeah, that's one of my my prouder moments.
So what challenges have you faced in advocating for HIV prevention in the South?
Oh, the racism. I mean, in all this form,
right?
And there's overt racism, and there's sometimes covert racism.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times, and let me say this: I think a lot of people are well-meaning; they just don't get it. HIV disproportionately affects Black people.
Okay.
Most of the agencies, the larger agencies in our state, are run by white people. And not saying that they're evil and they don't know what they're doing, but at the end of the day, in our world, there's a lot of talk about cultural competency and cultural humility. I don't have to teach Black people how to talk to Black people, right? So I don't need to teach you how to be culturally aware. And so there needs to be more leadership by the people who are most affected. And in Alabama, there's very little leadership from Black gay men. And let me just say, gay men, period. Even when I think about my stakeholders in my new role, there are very few gay men who I interact with at these agencies. Most of them are women. In the higher levels, the executive branch, they're mostly white women. And then like in middle management, they're mostly Black women. But even though, Black women are the second highest when it comes to new HIV infections, and really white women are almost non-existent for real in the HIV plane. Like, you look at their race, they're almost non-existent. But and I tell people this, not that I don't think they can do the work, but I think you can do the work better if you have people from the community doing the work. So let me just give you an example. Let's just say, for instance, what would you think people would do if the National Breast Cancer Association was run by a bunch of Black men?
Oh, I don't know. That sounds kind of contradictory.
People would be up in arms, right?
Right.
No one says anything about all the white people running stuff in HIV.
Well, you know something? I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna make sure that I keep it calm at this point, because we'll have to talk about that. Is that I've actually said this to an enormous amount of people. Is that why are they, they're talking about what happens in the LGBTQ community when it comes to HIV and AIDS. They're giving all this money to these white organizations that ain't doing not one bit of ethics whatsoever. They're squandering and using money all kind of ways, and it's not being done properly. But the people in the Black community that has a little small organization that's trying to get going, they want to hit you for one little thing when they say you made a mistake on this paperwork. and
Yeah.
scrutinize you.
And it's not fair. And I'll say this now. I piss a lot of white people out when I say this, especially like a lot of white gays. Is the fact that at the end of the day, you're still white.
Yes.
So like I tell people all the time, I don't like the term people of color. I rarely ever use it. And I don't think that being gay is the same thing as being black. I don't think they have the same civil rights issues whatsoever.
Ooh, but me you agree with that.
Because at the end of the day, if I'm gay and white, I can sit over there in the corner and do this.
Okay.
As long as I don't move or vote, you don't know if I'm gay or straight.
Right.
I can't sit over in the corner and pretend not to be black.
Right. Okay.
So whatever your level of marginalization is, hey, I got you beat. Because
yes.
you can actually hide. I can hide my gayness. I mean, like we can hide our gayness. We can't hide our blackness.
Right.
And that's what the first thing that people see. So like the false equivalency of being gay is saying it's the same civil right. No, it's a civil right. I'll guarantee you that, but it ain't the same.
It ain't the same.
It ain't the same. Mm-hmm. But like, and again, I think about even now in this current political climate, when women were getting their body autonomy rights taken away from them by the overturn of Roe, where were the white gay men? And now, but now, since they're trying to overthrow the Overthrow decision, we need to march the streets, and y'all need to help us. Girl, where were you when we needed help? Where were you when we needed help? And so even when you talk about activism, like I really don't like the way that we are set up to advocate for people because everybody advocates in a bubble.
Right.
Like even during the last presidential cycle, you saw the Muslims upset about what happened in Gaza. Hell, we was all upset about what was happening in Gaza. Like we was upset about what happened in Israel. Like we upset about happening everywhere else. But the thing that people don't understand is that was not the time to air your dirty laundry. If y'all were mad at that administration, wait till you get them back in office and then you apply pressure to them then to do it. Because everybody's not smart enough to know how to come up off the gas and put on some brakes.
Okay.
So you had people going into the selection, well, I'm just going to vote for Mickey Mouse. I ain't going to vote for nobody. I'm going to vote for the Green Party. And look what happened. So now, when grandma can't get into the country, because she lives in a Muslim country, or grandma getting kicked out of the country because she snuck in through the border from Mexico. Don't sit here and look at us and expect us to come save y'all because we were trying to tell y'all that. We were trying to tell you, but y'all, they sit around here. It's like even with white women, when Hillary was running, she let her husband cheat. Your husband cheat on you too, sis. But at the end of the day, you thought this was better than Hillary? You thought this was better than Kamala? Like, really? This is what we at now. Like this is nothing like that first term. I don't want to be political, but at the end of the day, this is crazy. We're living in the upside down.
Well, I just did a blog post a couple of days ago. And it's the end of democracy as we know it right now.
It is.
And so, they messed around and they're finding out. They're finding out because they so thought that they had an upper hand in some shape, form, or fashion due to this fact of, I don't like you because you're black. That was the main thing. And what I think people should be understanding, it doesn't matter if you're gay or straight, but when you're black, and you're being attacked from all sides and sides that you can't even count. And we have idiots that look like us that still went out and voted for this felon.
Here's what I can't get my head around. Everybody talking about how the price of eggs and the economy was terrible, right? Still during the Biden administration, we had record sales for Christmas,
right?
What?
The economy was great.
The economy is only bad when they want to get in office. They convince these idiots that somehow or another that is bad. When I tell you around Birmingham, you probably when last time you've been to Birmingham?
I've been there a couple of times since they put up the entertainment district.
Okay, well, if you come here now, it's almost unrecognizable because like you go to Homewood, you go all these, they got everything is lovely, everything is fine in their parts of the neighborhood. They're not suffering from a bad economy. They're suffering from racism.
Right.
That's
So
what they're suffering from.
what about but down by 3rd Avenue South? Had they built all that up yet?
Oh God, yes. Like when you were here, the only time you went to Avondale was get some sex and drugs, and maybe a little bit of both. They got a whole entertainment system down here. I'm serious. Like there was a time we wouldn't go to Avondale. Like you want me to go where? This white ladies with poodles walking up and down the street at 2:00 in the damn morning. It's not the economy. It's just that y'all don't want us to have a part of it. And I'll tell you this: even with this stuff with this government funding cut, they were fine with cutting the government funding until it hit them. Because they thought, and again, white people lead their own lives. Like literally, they think there are more black people on welfare and food stamps than white people. That's a lie. It ain't even enough for us.
It ain't even close.
We 13% of the population. All these billions of dollars they spend they go into white people. But they didn't sit around here and listen to their friends and tell them that it's us that's the problem. We are not the problem. We are not the problem.
Yup. Well, they finding out now.
And is because guess who ain't worried about them? Me. I'm gonna be fine. Me and mine. As for me and my house, we gonna be fine.
Okay.
I have a friend who told me, she said one of her coworkers came to her like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? They work for the state health department. She's like, about what? We know they're cutting these jobs. We might not have a job. And my friend was like, my mama don't tell me I could come stay in their guest house if things got bad. Oh, but we all can't do that. That's a privilege we don't have. And she was like, well, he told y'all this is what he was going to do. No, he didn't. Yes, he did. And if y'all hadn't been listening to Faux News, then you would have known what the deal was. But none of this stuff is surprising to any of us who've been woke.
Yep.
None of it is a surprise to us.
Yep.
It's these half-sleep folks around here who've been listening to this bull crap, obfuscating the truth. And now it's like, oh my God, I didn't think it was going to be this bad. Well, what were you thinking? Have you read The Handmaid's Tale lately? I think it's on Hulu. Watch The Handmaid's Tale. Blessed be the fruit.
Oh my God. Well, so tell us, how do you address the stigma associated with HIV in your community?
I address it by being me and being unapologetically me. Hopefully, like people who say stupid stuff about people who live with HIV can see me and go, well, that's not true. And people who are living with HIV can say, you know what? If he can do it, I can do it. There's nothing special about me. And people are like, well, I'm so glad you did this or you did. I'm like, I'm just doing the bare minimum here. Like, I'm just being me. And that's the bare minimum as far as I'm concerned. But like, being able to inspire people to live their best lives. I'm not a saint. I'm not perfect. I got my own set of issues. But at the end of the day, like there should be no reason for anybody to be ashamed of any disease that they have. I mean, people are still afraid to tell people they got cancer, Charles. I'm like, why y'all afraid? Why y'all keeping that a secret?
Oh, you know something? I think it's all about this societal change from when you and I were younger, coming up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It's like you could see the evolution of the change, but it's really hard to imagine that you have some of these younger folk and these younger kids that basically are like an ostrich because their head is stuck in the sand.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's not always younger people. Like I told you earlier about, the importance of having generational wealth. And when my grandmother died and left me that house, it allowed me to explore and do what I wanted to do, not what I had to do to make money, right? Mm-hmm. And so like when I hear young people talk about, and even some old people, well, I don't want to buy no house because that's too much maintenance. But you paying $1,500 a month to live in this apartment.
Yes. $1,500, $2,000.
Make it make sense.
Yeah.
We bought a house like 2.5, almost 3 years ago. Now my mortgage is only $1,000. Like, what are you doing? You pay $1,500 living in somebody else's stuff. You're throwing away money. And if you have kids, you're not setting them up for success. That's why the colonizers had the stuff that they got because they got it from their grandparents, who got it from their grandparents, who made our grandparents work for it.
Right.
And then pay them.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep. So can you tell us about the opening of the Prep Medical Clinic and its impact on the community?
Well, it's 2019. I just think it made a lot. I think it's probably because I'm not there anymore, but I think it's probably lowered the HIV rates in our area, mainly because you have PrEP that's accessible, and even now that more people should be on it. But people for whatever reason, or whatever conspiracy theories they're listening to, or whatever boyfriend they got trying to talk them out of it, then more people should be on it, but they're not. Making it affordable, making it accessible is really, really important to end the HIV epidemic. So I think it's been impactful in lowering the HIV rates, but they still could be lower. But you got so many reasons why people don't want to take it.
So what strategies do you use to engage Black men in HIV prevention and care?
Really just talking to them. I mean, you'd be surprised how telling stories and having things that people can relate to can change people's minds about stuff. Especially with my host of mentees. I had one who had a scare during Christmas. Some little guy they were messing around with told him that he was HIV positive. Well, you've been taking PrEP, right? Well, about that. Well, he told me that since we're in a relationship, I don't need to take PrEP. Why not? Because, at the end of the day, taking PrEP is a personal decision for your personal health. And it almost makes it non-consequential what the other person's doing because you're protected.
Right.
And so you'll have people who tell people, well, since we're dating now, you don't need to be on PrEP. Okay. No, that's not going to happen because I don't know what you're doing. You ain't with me.
Exactly.
Exactly. So you have things like that. You have people who think, well, if you take PrEP, then you're just a whore. No, that's not it. I just want to make sure I don't catch HIV. And so there's still a lot of judgment around things, a lot of things that people do. In my personal life, my husband is on PrEP because I'm HIV positive. I want to make sure we're taking every precaution possible to make sure that he doesn't contract it. Is contracting HIV the worst thing in the world? No, but that's another thing you don't have to deal with.
If you can prevent it, prevent it.
I tell people all the time, if I was perfectly healthy and you told me that if you take the red pill, you get HIV, you take the blue pill, you get diabetes, I'm taking the HIV pill because I like cakes and pies and stuff. And I can't be not enjoying myself. Diabetes and my legs will fall off.
Give you the cake and the pie.
I need a cake and a pie, And as long as I take this pill, I ain't worried about nothing. I'm fine, A lot of research shows that people who are living with HIV, we tend to live longer than people who don't. And it's mainly because we go to the doctor more often. I go to the doctor twice a year regardless to make sure my meds are working. The average man go to the doctor with something about to fall off. And, take me some pain pills and walk it out. Well, sir, your leg is around the corner. But I'm fine. So, there's that. There are worse things than having HIV.
So how do you combat the social and structural barriers that Black MSM face in accessing HIV care?
Again, when I was a nonprofit, I just made it non-traditional hours. People don't seem to understand how systems are created and who systems are created for. One of the things that I had in mind when I did that was, let me create a system that a Black trans woman can navigate. Because when you create a system that the most marginalized people can navigate, everybody else is going to be fine. When we think about the systems that we navigate now, most of them were made for well-to-do white people, particularly white men. So, if you got a good job, you can leave your job, go to the doctor, come back, or go golf and then come back, ain't got no problem. We can't do that. So, and even with setting the hours to be after hours, made it more accessible. A lot of times, even now, a lot of agencies have these 8 to 5 hours. The people that they serve don't get up to 11 o'clock. Why are you there at 8? Being able to put a testing service within the community that needs it instead of having them being in the South, where we all know that transportation is horrible, even in Atlanta with all the trains and buses y'all got, it's still pretty bad. But
Yes.
like in Birmingham, it's even worse. So like if I got to go to the other side of town, it's gonna be a 2-hour bus ride, just to get a test. What is that doing? So like being able to make it accessible and affordable in the areas where it's needed is the way that we need to be going in the future.
So, what role does education play in your advocacy work?
Woo, a lot. I firmly believe that people fear things that they don't understand. So being able to make sure that people understand, why they need to be engaged in HIV care and not always talking about risk. Because we always talk about, well, this is a risk, this is a risk, this is a risk. Well, what I know people who, if that was true, they probably should have HIV and don't, because they've been out there in those streets and they were able to avoid it. Right. But then, people who go out there one time and then, let me go take these pills. So like being able to talk about it in a way that's non-judgmental, because we judge people a lot. And then educate people on the do's and don'ts. There are people who still don't know you can't get HIV from drinking behind somebody. Like that's just crazy in this 2025.
How do you support individuals who are newly diagnosed with HIV?
I did that a lot more when I was in community, but like even now, people still will call me like, "Hey, I got this friend who found out that they were positive and they don't know what to do," and I just I talk to them, find out what they're afraid of, and help them realize that hey, you're still worthy, you're still a good person. You just got to deal with this disease that you didn't account for. But like I still do, like in my part time, I still talk to people, and also being able to share my story. Like you'd be surprised, like the number of times that I've been talking to people, and people come up to me after I speak, and they're like, "Oh my God, I cannot believe that you were able to get up there and say you had HIV like that," and and it just kind of made me realize that I can live too. I'm like, yeah, you can live, friend, live, because like. They buy into the stories and the horror stories that people tell and don't get the real knowledge and education about what this is like. Most of the time, I really wish they would get it on the forefront because I know that we have all the tools necessary to end HIV as an epidemic, but because people don't want to get tested, because people are sometimes ashamed of the things that they do, and they don't take the necessary precautions, you get new HIV incidences, but. I mean, between PrEP and people like me who take my meds, if I take my meds, I can't spread it to nobody. If everybody who was sexually active is on PrEP, they can't catch it. In a generation, it dies out. But we can't get people to get tested.
Wow. So let's jump over here to you as a career and community organizer. What motivated you to become a community organizer?
It was, again, identifying needs. You lived in Birmingham. There's not I think when I think about community organizing, I've done a couple things. I started a gospel choir back in the early 2000s. And in 2016, me and some friends of mine started Birmingham Black Pride. And then, me and my husband started an agency. But, when you think about organizing, most people, you have to organize around a need. So like with Birmingham Black Pride, there was a need to have a place for Black gay people, Black queer people in our city to like celebrate who we were or who we are. And, with the Legacy Pride group we have, they were mostly white. And again, like once they get that gay thing out, they white. So like, having events that we didn't want to go to because we didn't like the music, or they want to go play cornhole on a brewery on a Wednesday night. We're like, cornhole, that sounds disgusting. It's a game. But like, being able to stand in the gap for other people. So like, that's how we started that. But again, it was because there was a need there. We're Black, we're gay too, but we're not reflected in what is seen. I remember there was a movie came out called Stonewall that talked about the Stonewall riots.
Yep.
And it pissed me off because they had all these white boys up there, and it was about 2 trans women.
Right.
and one of them was black, one was Latino. Like, why can't we tell a true narrative in this country? It's always some bullcrap, you know. So like being able to create something for people was kind of important.
Well, you know how those folk are that love to get that credit because it's all about wanting to get a power grab.
It's crazy.
How do you build trust and rapport within the communities you serve?
You know, in our community, it's kind of hard because people have so much trauma that they go through. Whether it's family trauma, whether it's personal trauma. I tell people just do what you say and say what you're gonna do. Say what you want to do and do what you say. Because the one thing that people don't want is people tell them they're gonna do something, then do something else. You know, so like being able to walk the walk and talk the talk. But sometimes that pisses people out. And I tell people this all the time. You will have people, because there are a few people here in Birmingham who say, well, I don't like that Tony Walker Billups. And when they say that, I say, ask them what they did to me. Because I would give you a reason not to like me. But I'm not the person who's just come around and just do stuff to people just because. You know, my go-to is to help people. Like when I was growing up, I wanted to be a superhero before I realized that wasn't a real job, you know. So like, you know, I want to help people. But when people don't really want the help or want something that's not there, then they start creating these narratives about you, and then you find out about it, you clap back, then they feelings hurt. So like, you know, when people say, well, I don't like talking, why? What you do to them? Because you can't say I did anything to you.
Remember I say the old cliche, do not throw stones if you live in a glass house.
That part. And people do that all the time. And part of it is just community trauma. Our community has so much trauma. And so like that's kind of hard.
Can you share an example of a successful community initiative you led?
Well, I mean, Birmingham Black Pride has been marginally successful. It's just kind of hard to get people to do, you know, to help themselves. Of effort that I led. So this is not something that a lot of people know, but like there have been a lot of times when, especially during COVID, like, you know, when COVID hit, you know, my team and I were doing HIV testing and STI screenings. And then, you know, COVID hit, ain't nobody coming around. So like during the pandemic, we actually changed our focus a little bit. The USDA was giving out those vegetable boxes and fruit boxes, and we would like deliver those to people. You know, clients that we knew, people that we knew. I remember getting a grant from Regions Bank to buy groceries for people. So like being able to, again, figure out what those needs are and then getting yourself and rallying other people around to help out. I might have somebody who I know is really, really in need, like maybe they lost their job or something and need some help. People inbox me like, hey, could you help me? You know what I do? I go to my rich friends and like, hey, I got somebody in need. You got $500 we can help with? And they usually say yes. And then the people are thanking me like, hey, this ain't my money. I got this for you from somebody else because I don't want to send out no false narratives. Don't be coming to me for no money because I ain't got nothing.
Okay, ooh, no, look, not like that in a way. I understand. And so, you know, like now that, you know, with February being Black History Month, and, you know, I reached out to you to ask you about who was the most inspirational, influential person in your career, in your life, as to what they have done in Black history. And you gave me the name Nat Turner. Now, I want you to tell us, how has Nat Turner's legacy influenced your career in life?
Nat Turner, so for those of you who don't know, Nat Turner was a slave who was also a preacher. They taught him how to read, which was the dangerous thing because that's why they don't want us to read, because they know that once we get a little knowledge, we become dangerous. Nat Turner had decided that he was going to lead a revolt. So Nat Turner got with some of his homeboys like, hey, we have to break out of here. Y'all need to watch Drunk History. Like they talk about this one story, but he decided to lead a revolt so that he could free himself and other enslaved people. And as we do, you tell the wrong person, then they go tell massa, and then, you know, everybody get killed. But even with those threats, he still kept on doing what he did. And to me, like, that's a lot. I see that a lot of that in me. When I was younger, um, I'll be 58 day after tomorrow. And like growing up, born in 1967, so even in the 70s and early 80s, you still saw footage from the marches in the 60s. And you have to realize that was like 6 years before I was born. And I used to always wonder, like, if I had been around during that time, what would I be doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I now know that I would probably be dead because I would have been one of the people on the front lines.
Right.
Because you're not going to do this. You're
Right.
not going to do this. And I put myself in harm's way a lot of times for people, mostly usually career-wise. But like, I just realized that it's somebody's got to stand up for the rest of us. And I think that's what Nat was doing. And he was unapologetic about it.
Right.
And so that's what I find myself. That's what I feel like I do for people.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody might not agree, but like being able to be a badass and do what needs to get done is why I like him.
And so, what aspects of Nat Turner's story resonate with you the most?
The importance of education. The importance of education. If you can capture a man's mind, you can capture his soul. And when you educate yourself, you free your mind and you can free your soul. So like the fact that they were like, oh, we're just gonna teach on that how to read, there ain't gonna be no problem. You're gonna have a problem. Once I learn how to read, it's gonna be a problem. And so like even now, I mean, something that's emblematic of that. I actually decided to go back to school about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Because I never completed my bachelor's degree. I've been very, very fortunate to have some very, very good jobs and wonderful careers. But in my current field, if I want to move up in the company, which I really don't, I just want to be there. I like the job now. But if I want to move up, I'm going to need a 4-year degree. So like I got one more semester at UAB and I have a bachelor's in public health. So like education is really, really important. But the other thing, thank you. When you first started talking about that, about who is that person, I was like, oh yeah, he did ask about Nat Turner. But the other person is my mom. My mom had me at 14 years old. And so like most of the time when people have children that young, they don't turn out like me.
Well, my mom was 15.
Okay, so we're the exception and not the rule, though, right?
Exactly.
But like my mom taught me. She spent a lot of time when I was a kid. Like I could read by the time I was 3, writing by the time I was 4. I mean, I never went to kindergarten. I remember being in 1st grade, like, why the hell am I here? Like these children can't read, they can't write. Why am I here?
You're absolutely right though, because like with the situation, me and my mom, I like became totally independent of her by the time I was 3, and she was just like, oh my god, and she always wanted to do something. I'm like, I can do it myself.
I started walking early. I think my mom said I started walking like 9 or 10 months old. So that was she was very influential in shaping who I am right now. And the other thing is, when you think about the work that I do trying to help people, I don't know how much time we got. I'm gonna tell you this quick story. I was 25 years old and working in retail, and so Christmas was time off is very important to us. And we had a family tradition. We didn't have many, but one of our traditions was we go to my mom's house and have breakfast, and then we go to my grandmother's house and exchange presents. And my family is late for everything. Like literally, as a child, if we wanted to be somewhere by 6 o'clock, we had to tell my mom we need to be there by 3, just so we can be 30 minutes late. Like she that kind of late. And so we've gone on to my mom's for Christmas breakfast, and everybody was late. So I was frustrated about that because I am neurotically on time most of the time. Like I have like physical symptoms of distress when I'm late. I cannot stand being late. And so we were late for breakfast, and then we're getting ready to go to my grandmother's house. And my mom says, hey, Tony, could you take this bag? And I don't know what the people's name was, but they lived a street over from my grandma. And I'm like, Mom, shoot, we already late. And you want me to take this bag? I was going out. When I said I was going out. But I was 25 years old, but I still got that bag and did what my mama told me to do. So I got the bag and I took it to these people's house. And Charles, I didn't even pay attention to what the yard looked like when I walked in because I was just mad in a rush. And I open the door, they knock on the door, they open it, and I look inside, and like it was like Christmas everywhere but these people's house. And then I looked at the bag that my mom had gotten me, and it was a bag full of food, and it had some like presents for the kids. And I was like, you selfish son of a sapsucker. Like, I was like, oh my God. You know, and we grew up poor, but we weren't that poor. We still got a present too for Christmas.
Right.
You know? But like that really that changed like the direction of my life. Just being able to empathize and see, you know, life through another person's eyes and realize that, you know, no matter how bad you think your life is, there's always someone that's worse off than you.
Yeah. Oh boy. You know, well, how do you draw inspiration from Nat Turner's Rebellion in your advocacy work?
Creating coalitions, like, you know, finding somebody else to fight with you. You know, because, you know, as an enslaved person, you can't break out on the plantation by yourself. So you got to find other willing workers to work with you. Even growing up, you know, I was a big comic book nerd growing up, and I was telling a group of people this today. You know, Superman, Batman, they were all cool, but you know, my favorite was the Justice League because it was a group of people with different gifts and abilities who came together as one. And you know, even right now, in the moment that we're in on the national level, it's going to take us coming together like the Justice League or the Avengers, you know,
exactly.
to defeat these supervillains. Let into the lighthouse.
Ooh, because there's a lot of them too.
There's a lot of them. The Legion of Doom is like around here.
Yeah,
but like, you know, being able to help get other people to join your cause, and I'm pretty good about doing that. Especially when it's something worthwhile.
So, what lessons from Nat Turner's life do you apply to your own work?
Everybody, all skin folk ain't kin folk.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That is so true.
And, you know, and I didn't even get these questions. But like, yes, all skin folks ain't kin folk. You gotta watch people. You have to watch people.
How do you honor Nat Turner's legacy in your daily life and career?
Keep fighting for people who are underprivileged. I think a lot of times when people like create movements or fight for other people, they fight for the people who are immediately identify with. Let me give you an example. So like, you know, in that world, I would be somebody who's very, very pro-Black, somebody who's pro-gay, somebody who's very anti-HIV stigma because I'm Black, gay, and I'm living with HIV. But at the end of the day, I also have to care about women who can't control their bodies because of these rules that people have. I also have to care about immigrants who only want to come to this country to better their lives. You know, I also have to care about trans people who, you know, just their identity alone can get them killed. You know, so like I made this post on Facebook the other day, and the key to us being successful is learning to care about things that are not our issues. Because like those other issues aren't my issues. But just because they're not my issues don't mean I shouldn't care about them. You know, if you go on TikTok or YouTube, you find white people crying all day long now. Well, I didn't know it was going to hurt me. Yeah, because you don't care about yourself. There was a lady on there talking about some farm bill that her farm going to close down. They done had the farm for 4 generations. That means that you done had some Black people employed for you that you didn't pay because they were slaves. But y'all still benefiting from this. I wanted them to cut everything. And then once they cut your farm bill, all of a sudden you crying. Where were you when they were cutting people food stamps? Where were you when they were cutting people houses? Bruh, I mean, I'm like, we can't walk around this earth just caring about ourselves.
Right.
Because when you do, you end up like them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, but when you think about situations like that, you know, and just you know, just to put it in its right perspective, do you think that these people honestly thought that under this new administration, the things that he said he was going to do, that they would not be implemented?
No, I think they thought they wanted them to be implemented. What they didn't know was going to affect them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. They wanted all the stuff that he's doing. They voted for it. They knew what he was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then they didn't think about when you cut all the government jobs. Think about it. You worked for the government at one point. Yep. Who were the supervisors? What they look like? They look like us.
Well, my district director, yes, he did look like me, but the people above him did not. They didn't. Like me. Exactly.
So when you shut down the whole government agency like that, guess who else gets cut out of jobs? I mean, like it's crazy. And then like if it, I tell people all the time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And we're not perfect, but we were not this broken. And then you got somebody who's literally profiting off of the government, telling other people they don't deserve stuff.
Let me ask you this question, because this is what actually really is a bad thing for this country. Elon Musk is from South Africa. He's not even American. He's been granted access into the Oval Office.
Did you see that little boy? Tell Trump to shut up.
Yeah. Why are you sitting in that seat? Because you ain't the president. But see, when they doing that, when they doing all these different things, how is it that this man has been granted access to everybody's personal? Well, actually, they got that on hold. He got some of the information, people's personal information, from the Treasury. But how do you think this immigrant himself has got this kind of access, and nobody that's in the Congress or the Senate or the Supreme Court has done any kind of check to stop that?
Because racism is a communicable mental illness that hurts white people just like it hurts black people. And the crazy part about it is they don't think it's going to hurt them. When you think about the reason why the price of eggs and groceries not going down, who's working in the fields? A friend of mine told me today the Google mushroom shortage. There's a mushroom shortage in, like, I'm talking like the portobellos and stuff. Like, there's a mushroom shortage because no one's picking mushrooms because all the people that's supposed to be picking them are gone or being deported. Mm-hmm. So, like, immigrants are very important and vital to our economy. Mm-hmm. They literally do the job that only we did back in the day. Mm-hmm. And so, like, once we start doing it, we got to get another new crop of people. And now they can't do it because you got these dummies saying you don't want them in the country. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But I think they did not think that this was going to affect them. They buy into the racist narratives that all black people are on welfare, that we are skimming the system. And then when you look around and really see what's going on, most of the welfare fraud that I see is with them.
It is.
Think about this thing. What's that guy in Mississippi, Brett Favre?
Yes.
How come he ain't in jail?
NFL quarterback.
He's a welfare queen.
Yes.
He's a welfare queen.
Him and the governor.
But they are still, and it's like, well, we're the part of law and order until you start breaking the laws and don't want the order. Like, y'all freaking this two left, like, and then they create these narratives of somehow or another they're the saviors and they're the one who do it. No, y'all messed up, and you need help. You need Jesus. You need Black Jesus.
Ooh, I tell you, because you know what, they have definitely done some things that's caused so much chaos and disorder now.
I think this is just an iceberg.
Yeah, and this is definitely going to be a very difficult thing to, if we get the chance to vote again. I mean, we don't even know if we're going to vote again. Bruh. Because that might not even happen.
They saying the quiet stuff out loud, and what's funny is you get white people like they just joking. No, they're not. They are not joking. Like, none of this is funny at this point.
Right.
None of this is funny. I know plenty of people who lost their jobs, whose jobs are being threatened to be lost, all because billionaires, not even millionaires, billionaires can have more money and access. It makes no sense whatsoever.
But see, this is why, when I look at these professional athletes that went along and they wanted to put their name and their signature on this thing for this criminal that's in the White House right now, What they fail to realize is that they're just like all of us in the same bucket because they're not part of that top 1%.
And you know, but you know who else do that? Poor white people with 3 teeth in their hands and 1 in their pocket.
Especially in the rural areas.
Especially in the rural areas. Like we ride our motorcycles all the time in rural areas. And it's just funny to me how they got all these Trump 2024 things up. You living in a lean-to. Like literally you living in a body made of bricks and sticks, like 1 to 3 little pigs. And somehow or another, you're identifying with the billionaire. It's delusional for me.
Very much so.
They're delusional. But so, yeah, we got to try to do better. We got to try to do better.
So, in closing, what are some of the things you'd like to leave with the audience? You know, whether it's your social handles, how they can contact you, connect with you, or just some good fruit for thought for all these good things that you had to say to us tonight.
Well, you can find me on most social media with Tony Billups or Tony Walker Billups, or Walk 6076. I think that's my Instagram. But like literally, I just want people to know that we're in some trying times right now. We are in uncharted waters. But the one thing I don't want people to do is to give up. And I want us to be smart. One of my friends posted a meme or article this morning that was patently false. But even when you see stuff that you think aligns with what your beliefs are, do some research on it before you post it. Because a lot of y'all have a certain level of credibility with your friends and neighbors and people around you. And when you put out dumb, untrue stuff, you make your friends say dumb and untrue stuff too. So I'm very mindful. Like even if I put up something that's wrong, I will take it down and let people know, hey, this is wrong. Should put that up. But like, and also go vote. Get registered to vote. Hopefully we get to vote again. But like, stop worrying about just you. I tell people this all the time. If there's a candidate who I know is a right-wing, like Trumpy Republican, and then I got a Democratic person who may not be all in for gay rights, you know who I'm going to vote for? That Democratic person who may not be all in for gay rights. Because I know what the other one's going to do. They may not be all in for civil rights, but I know what the other one's going to do. Mm-hmm. We cannot afford to be one-issue voters, and that's how they got us. Because all of their issues are evil, and they hurt people. Our issues are not evil. I mean, we want, Muslim people to be able to come into this country freely. We want people from below the border to be able to come in. We want black people to be able to walk down the street without getting shot in the back. Like, those are things that we want. They just want to take stuff from people and make people feel bad. Right. And all those selfish people are on that same thing together. But we have got to be beyond ourselves. Again, the legislators like Rashida Tlaib and them, I'm so mad at them right now. Mm-hmm. I'm so mad at them right now. All this non-commitment stuff. This is why we're here. Mm-hmm. This is why we're here. And we don't learn from our mistakes. We keep making the same dumb mistakes we refuse to learn from. One thing I tell you, my mama will tell you about me. She'll tell you I never got whipped for the same thing twice. Mm-hmm. Like you might have beat my ass for like going in the baby oil one day, but you're not gonna do that again. I might find something else to get into, but I'm not gonna do the same stupid stuff twice. And I think as a group, we keep doing the same stupid stuff. And the stupid stuff is what they do. They only worry about themselves. They're very individualistic. When you think about other cultures, like Latino cultures or African cultures, it's very communal. Mm-hmm. Western civilization, Western culture is very individualized. And that's where we keep messing up. Because in this cliche, we're definitely stronger together. Mm-hmm. And, while you worry about just your piece of the pie, everybody else getting eaten by the wolves.
Mm. Wow. And so I'd like to say in closing, I want to thank you, Tony, for being here. And I also just want to say that, it's this kind of conversation that we need for the show, because when we want to inspire and motivate people in our communities as we build them and expand them, these are things that not only do they need to know, but they need to know that there are people that look just like them that are also thinking about what's best and how to make things happen.
Yeah.
This is where together as a community, we are much, much stronger. Individually, we may fall. So we got to think about it. Hey, it's time to actually come together. It's time to make it happen. But once we actually get this whole circle complete, we never let the line be broken.
Yeah, absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
never let the line be broken. And I want to tell you, I'm glad that you came, but we definitely got to have you back because this was truly a wonderful experience, and it's one that I know that everybody has got something from what you had to say tonight.
Thanks, man.
And again, thank you all for being here tonight. We will have another great show for you all tomorrow. Again, every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Please join us live for the hottest podcast in America, America in Black and White. Thank you again, Tony. Thank you all, audience, and we will see you all tomorrow night.